Welcome to the Occult London podcast. This is a new podcast dedicated to exploring magic, mysticism, the Qabbalah, as well as many other topics of interest. This is the first episode of a series exploring different concepts in relation to the Qabalistic Tree of Life. I am your host, Will, and I'll be guiding you on this journey as well as sharing some of my ideas with you. I'm not purporting to be an expert or anything like that. This is very much a new project for me. I want to, learn as much as you guys do, hopefully, and then hopefully we can share ideas and come up with new concepts and potentially look at doing some events and things like that in the London area in the future. So this first episode is actually looking at as a brief introduction to the Qabbalah, which I've studied for the last probably about 20 years, and I'm particularly keen on sharing my ideas and taking things from there. So I hope you enjoy. So this first episode we are going to be looking at an introduction to the Qabbalah and an overview of the Tree of Life, before we go into more in-depth analysis of each sephira in the future. In this first episode, we're going to be looking at what is the Qabbalah, the origins of the tree, the structure of the tree and the different sephiroth, the three pillars, the three triads, the four worlds, and also the lightning flash or the path of the serpent. So, to kick things off, what is the Tree of Life? Well, it's really an ancient received tradition of mysticism that is said to provide an insight into the spiritual nature of God, as well as the creation and makeup of mankind and the universe. The word Qabbalah comes from the root, which means to receive or accept. However, it has also been described as meaning handed down or oral tradition. Either way, it's very clear that this is talking about hidden knowledge, and it's an oral tradition rather than being written down. Gareth Knight, in his excellent book, A Practical Guide to Qabalistic Symbolism, which has got quite a mixed fans out there, some people like it, some people don't, defines the Sephiroth as the following: stages in the emanations of the spirit of God or man, in its progress from noumenal existence to its building of a physical vehicle in the phenomenal world. The Tree of Life consists of 10 spheres, plus there is also an 11th sphere with 22 paths interconnecting them, and it's meant to be a representation of the universe. The spheres, or sephiroth, are stages in the emanations of the spirit of God in its descent from the unmanifest into the manifest world. Each sphere represents a different state of consciousness rather than a geographical location, and in this sense it's almost like a flow chart of the process of map of creation. Dion Fortune had a really good description of the Qabbalah when she says, "The curious symbol system known to us as the Tree of Life is an attempt to reduce to diagrammatic form every force and factor in the manifested universe and the soul of man, to correlate them one to another and reveal them spread out as on a map, so that the relative positions of each unit can be seen and the relations between them traced. In brief, the Tree of Life is a compendium of science, psychology, philosophy and theology." So in essence, Dion Fortune is really describing it as a symbol. However, what is a symbol? Well, if we look at the dictionary definition, a symbol is something that is a representation of something beyond its intrinsic nature. Therefore, the Tree of Life could be seen as being a key or a set of keys to access ideas, philosophies, and concepts that are really kind of beyond our comprehension at the moment. And this, again, is something Gareth Knight mentions when he talks about the whole aim of symbolism is its own destruction, so that one can really get to the reality which it represents. So what he's talking about here really is an idea of the essence of the Qabbalah, in the sense that it's a built-up conceptual treasure house, really, of images and forms, but behind it there is really these kind of archetypal powers which slowly filter down through images to us on the lower planes. And obviously with regards to this, and we'll go into this in future episodes, but through the use of the correspondences, the the magician or the mystic can really attribute different deities, astrological structures or occult concepts onto the tree, and so give him or her, deeper insights into the nature of the universe as well as him or herself. So we're moving on to the kind of origins of the Qabbalah, and there's not a huge amount of documentation about this. The earliest documents I could find that talk about this are from around about 100 to 1000 AD, dealing with the Merkabah mystics' attempts to penetrate the 7-foot halls or Hekaloch in order to reach the Merkabah, which is the throne of God. And if we look at some of these texts, we find a lot of similarities with different shamanic practices. There's lots of fasting, prayer, and emphasis on escaping the physical to experience true theurgy. If we look at the visions of Ezekiel, there's some really nice quotes around these early Kabbalists. So, for example, I looked and saw a whirlwind coming from the north, a great cloud with fire flashing back and forth and brilliant light all around it. In the centre of the fire was a glow like amber, and within it was the form of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had a human form. Also, the following quote I particularly like from the book of Hekhalot Rabbatai. The man goes in and stands on the threshold of the gate of the 7th palace. The holy living creatures then look at him with their 512 eyes. Each one of the eyes of the holy living creatures is split open, the size of a large winnower's sleeve, and their eyes look as if they race like lightnings. Besides them, there are the eyes of the mighty cherubim in the wheels, which look like torches and flaming coals. Another quote which is quite interesting as well, which is kind of carrying on with this experience of the man with the divine. The man shudders and trembles and recoils. He faints in terror and collapses. But Prince Anaphiel and the 63 guards at the gates of the 7th palaces all support him and help him. A trumpet then blows from above the firmament that is over their heads. The holy living creatures cover their faces. The cherubim and the wheels turn their faces away. The man goes in and stands before the throne of glory. These descriptions and visions of the mystics also bear some similarities to the Egyptian Book of the Dead, or the Book of the Coming Forth of Day. So, the names and the gods and the magical processes spoken before each palace is entered. In terms of the sort of classical texts that form the basic structure of traditional Kabbalah, the main ones are the Sefer HaZahar, which is the Book of Splendor, the Sefer Yetzir, or Book of Formation, which is from around about 1562, and then the Sefer HaBahir, which is the Book of Light, 1651. The Zohar was most likely written around 1280 by Moses Shem Tov de Leon in Guadalajara. I don't think I can pronounce that properly. Northeast of Madrid, Spain, where there was lots of activity at that time. So we've covered a bit of an overview of what the Kabbalah is and some of the origins. So the next thing we're going to be looking at is really the structure of the Tree of Life and how it really excuse me, and how it relates to the different Sephiroth. So as we've said already, the tree consists of 10 Sephiroth with a hidden 11th Sephirah, which is designed to represent the descent of consciousness from the divine down to where we are on Malkut, which is the earth. The 10 Sephiroth are normally on positions on 2 pillars, with a third invisible pillar, which we kind of deal with later on. And they are as follows. So Keter, the crown, which is, from an astrological point of view, some people put it as Pluto. This really represents the dimensionless point, so indivisible, ultimate potential, root of all things, essence of being. And also, the spirit, so Sahasrara chakra. This is the point where everything comes from. The next one that we look at is Chokhmah, which is wisdom, traditionally associated with Neptune and the zodiac, and this is representative of the masculines, the will, the drive to create, the father, the energizing force, chaos, authority figure, and it would also correspond with the Ajna chakra, or the root of the nose, and the pituitary gland. Bina is the next Sephira, and this is directly opposite Chokhmah, and this is representing understanding. So it's Saturn, so it's feminine receptivity, creativity, mother, also Babylon. The next Sephira we'd come to is actually kind of the invisible one, which is known as Da'at, or knowledge. This is the invisible sphere above the abyss and representative of intuition and synthesis. Also air, Visuddhi chakra. The next one that we would come to would be Kased, which is representative of mercy. And this is very much the sphere of Jupiter, so it's expansion, it's organisation, it's stability, law. The next one after that is Gebura, which is strength. Attributed traditionally to Mars, it's very much a warlike, powerful, aggressive sphere, but also the sphere of things like the karmic forces and a sphere for sort of breaking things down. So sometimes it's associated with negativity, but this is very much a breaking things down so that good things can come out of it. The next one after this would be known as Tiferet, which is the centre of the tree, representative of beauty and the sun, harmony, balance, joy. And this is the Anahata chakra, or the Manipura chakra. The sphere after that is Netzach, which is victory, Venus, Eros, beauty and seduction, and then Hod, splendour, Mercury, intelligence, logic, communication and commerce. And then finally we're getting close to where we are, which is the Yesod, the foundation, which is the lunar kind of astral plane, crowds of peoples that can represent the kind of herd mentality, and it's also attributed to the element of water. And finally below that is Malkut, which is the kingdom. And this is very much physical manifestations, the crystallization of forces and completion of things. So that's an overview of the 10 Sephira, and obviously between them there are 22 paths which connect each of the Sephiroth, and these are normally represented by the 22 Hebrew letters, which are the trump cards of the tarot, and also the classical elements, so air, earth, fire, water, spirit, planets, and also the signs of the zodiac, but we'll be talking about those in future episodes. So moving on, I now wanted to just give a quick overview of the pillars and what they represent and how they fit into the tree. So if we look at the pillars of the Tree of Life, the Sephira that we just spoke about, they sit on 2 pillars with the 3rd pillar in the centre, and these pillars are really representative of 3 initial processes which form the beginnings of consciousness, as well as the concept of harmony between opposing forces. For this reason, they're sometimes called the Zahath, or hidden splendours. Again, apologies if my pronunciation of that is not great. And it's normally a term which is used to kind of denote the balancing of opposing forces of mercy and justice through will. The 3 pillars are normally called the following. So we've got the pillar of consciousness, which is the middle pillar, the pillar of force, which is also known as the pillar of mercy, which is the white pillar, the masculine force, and then the pillar of form, which is the pillar of severity, the black pillar, and the feminine force. And these pillars really kind of represent the different forces in relation to the path of initiation between the two. Colin Lowe, in his excellent book Notes on Qabala, explains this really well when he says the following, and I quote: "The classification of Sephiroth into 3 pillars is a way of saying that each Sephira in a pillar partakes of a common quality which is inherited in a progressively more developed and structured form. From the top of a pillar to the bottom, Tiferet, Yesod and Malkut all share with Kether the quality of consciousness in balance, or synthesis of opposing qualities. But in each case, it is expressed differently to the increased degree of structure imposed. Likewise, Chokhmah, Hesed and Netzach share the quality of force or energy or expansiveness, and Bina, Geburah and Hod share the quality of form, definition and limitation. From Keter down to Malkut, force and form are combined. The symbolism of the tree has something in common with the production line, with molten metal coming in one end and finished cars coming out the other. So as we can see from that particular quote, these pillars really are representative of these forces that are manifested in the different Sephiroth. And likewise, each Sephirah that is on a pillar it will have a correlation and a similarity with the other Sephiroth on that pillar as well. So, but as I said, we will be going into that in more detail in future episodes, but I wanted to kind of talk through it in brief now. So, moving on, I wanted to talk to you next about the 3 triads. So, as well as looking at the Sephiroth and the paths of the tree, this model that we are trying to understand can also be understood through the 3 triads of manifestation. I'm not sure whether everyone knows what a triad is, so I just thought I'd give a quick definition. So a triad is very much a shape consisting of a point, a line, another line, and a point. So in this original shape, we see the origins of the universe, and it's no accident that a triangle has often been used as a symbol of manifestation. They have the strongest shape, so any weight that's put on them is distributed evenly between all 3 sides. They are used to represent male and female energies, so upwards is obviously male, downward is female. This could also be interesting if you relate it in relation to the hexagram as being a union of male and female elements. And also triangles in different forms are used to explain the 4 elements, so they're a very important symbol and extremely important in relation to the spiritual path and the the wisdom of the ages, really. So from the point of view of the Qabalistic Tree of Life, there's essentially 3 triads. So the first triad is known as the supernal triad, and this is really this is the first triad. So it's Keter, Chokhmah and Bina, which forms a triangle pointing upwards, and this represents really the uppermost origins of force and form and the relationship between the Divine Father and the Divine Mother. And this is kind of the archetypal origin of the entire tree. And it's also interesting that this triangle faces upwards while the others face downwards. The next triangle we come to is known as the ethical triad. So this is the Chesed, Geburah and Tiferet, and this forms a triangle pointing downwards. And that represents the ethical nature of the universe by balancing the mercy of Jupiter, which is Chesed, with the fiery destructive force of Geburah, and then tempered through the lens of Tiferet. So I'm losing my words. And then the final triad is the astral triad, which is composed of Netzach, Hod and Yesod, which forms a triangle pointing downwards. And this is very much known as the magical triad. And again, it's a balancer of the forces of Netzach, a lower version of Chokhmah and Chesed, and the form aspects of Hod through the magical lunar sphere of Yesod. So, yeah, I mean, as I said, these are very complicated concepts, so I just wanted to kind of briefly go through them, but through the work of the different triads, you can begin to see, again, how the divine is manifested down into the physical world. So, again, it's this concept of a working from the very point, the archetypal idea, right the way down into manifestation. The next thing I wanted to cover briefly in this initial episode is the 4 worlds. So as we can see from what we've talked about already, so the Qabalistic tree can be divided into 10 different stages of creation or sephiras. There's also another way of dividing the tree where the tree is represented into 4 different worlds. And these are Atziluth, which is the archetypal world, which is essentially the preliminary phase of divine creation, We've got Bria, which is the creative world, which is defining initial forms, the primordial energy of the Absolute. Yetzirah, which is the formative world. The divine energy is divided and separated into actual qualities. And then Asaya, which is the material world, which is the physical universe where things function in time and space. So let's talk about these individually. So the first world we come to is obviously the Olam HaAtziluth, which is the world of emanations, or the archetypal world. This is known as Atziluth for short by most people, and it's really the world of emanations. So this is where the kind of pure light of God is kind of gradually filtered down through the different spheres of consciousness. It's emanate. Emanations is one of the words that we use to describe this, and that really does mean to flow from. So if you can imagine a spring, or the origin of a spring or a river, and everything flowing out of that is very much kind of a good corresponding image to this. The word Absolute, apparently from my research, is derived from the word Etzel, which is meaning nearby, and again gives us a good idea of the closeness of the unmanifest to our world. It also means Hamshakar, which is drawing out, which again is an idea used to describe the nature of emanations. So it's very much drawing out this force. So we are drawing it out, and it is drawing us in. So that's quite an interesting concept to have a think about. So the next world we come to is Olam HaBaria, the world of creation, which is also known as Korsha, or the throne. And Beria is very much the world of the archetype, the archangels, and corresponds to the element of water and the letter He of the Tetragrammaton. And this world covers Chokhmah and Bina on the Tree of Life. From my research, it mentions that it takes its name from the Hebrew in Isaiah 43:7. I have created Bria for him for my glory. I formed him, yea, I have made him. The author of the Sefer Bahir makes the idea that as light was an attribute of God, light did not have to be created but was formed, something out of something. However, evil was not always part of God, so it had to be created. So this brings into mind the Kabbalistic theory of Tzimtzum, which is contraction. So in order for creation to proceed, there needs to be a place where God is not. So this kind of gives us a bit of an idea about both good and evil are sort of part of God's plan. Again, I'm really big fan of Colin Lowe's work on the Kabbalah, and this is one of the things he said about this. If one also supposes that the ultimate nature of God is good, then one must also conclude that evil was created. That the goodness, light, and peace of God were deliberately withheld in some measure to create the universe, and this reflects the separation of Keter into Chokhmah and Bina, the right and left sides of the manifest God. This is a key Kabbalistic idea, the negative qualities of existence. The rigour and severity of God as depicted by the left-hand pillar of the Tree of Life are not the result of a malevolent third party, a diabolical anti-God fouling up the works. They are the very essence of a creative act. Bria is also the creative world. However, it's not really where anything tangible is created, but rather more sort of intangible conditions and ideas are created. And that's very much the place where it's almost like the conditions of form are starting to be made, but it's still very much an abstract concept. The next world we come to is Yetzirah, which is the world of formation and also the angels. And this is the world where the angels, and it also corresponds to the element of air and the letter Vau of the Tetragrammaton. And this covers the next 6 Sephiras on the Tree of Life. This, according to my research, takes its name from the Hebrew in Isaiah 43:7. I have created him for my glory. I have formed him, yea, I have made him. This is the world of formation where, complex forms are built synthetically. However, tangible physical things are still not created here. So, it really looks at sort of different. It's the world of intangible, kind of differentiated objects, and it's a world where things from the world of Bria are beginning to start to manifest, but they're still not quite there yet. It's in this sphere, though, obviously, because it's the formation of the angels. This creates all the myths and the poetry and the music of our culture. It's the place where all kind of forms ever thought of can be found here. And one of my favourite authors actually wrote this about it. So one of the most interesting developments in recent times is the realisation that it is becoming possible to bridge the gap between Yetzirah and desire using computer technology. And the term cyberspace is widely used to describe this idea. Computer programs have become the medium for turning form into something that can be shared. A program which defines a jug in all its other respects allows us to share the form of the jug without any potter having to get her hands dirty. It isn't a real jug and it won't hold water, but it can hold the form of water, the Yetziratic representation of liquidity, and I could pour Yetziratic water out of my Yetziratic jug. The fact that we can share the form of an object without having to make it, and this is increasingly the way industrial designers work today, means that humans will have the ability to interact in Yetzirah as magicians have always done, without any form of magical training. Writing was the first breakthrough in recording the contents of Yetzirah, and it gave the contents of an independent, if static universe. Cyberspace will be an ever greater breakthrough, and it will be not only record the contents, but also enable us to bring them to life in a limited way. Yetzirah is in the process of becoming real. So the next world we come down to is the material world, which is known as Isaiah. And this is the world of action. It corresponds to the final little Hey. It also corresponds to Sephira and Malkut, and this takes its word from this takes its word also from the Hebrew in Isaiah. I don't actually have that quote to hand at the moment, but this is actually very much where everything is come down into manifestation, and that is very much where we're based at the moment. So that's a little bit of a brief introduction about the four worlds. Obviously, we will be talking about these in more detail in future episodes. The four worlds, really, in terms of what they mean to the magician or the students. So obviously, they delineate the manifestation of consciousness into the formative world, and also the journey back. But as well as this, there are actually different parts of the soul that correspond to these words. So as we've already seen, the soul is considered to be inseparable from God, as the verse states, for part of God is his people, which is in Deuteronomy 32:9. However, as the soul emanates from the Ein Sof, eventually to be clothed in human form, it descends through the worlds, leaving a spark or an essence of itself in each world as it passes. And these sparks can really be considered to be keys or steps back to the divine, in terms of they give us different levels of reality manifesting in each of the worlds. The soul enclosed within the human body is a reflection of the divine form, which is known as a Selim or Selim Elohim, which can be essentially described as the spiritual mould of man's physical form, which is linking his body and his soul. So this mould very much creates via the configuration of the Sephiroth that we've already seen, and includes all of creation within him. So at the same time as the outer configuration shows that the inner dimension of the soul reflects the infinite light, which illuminates the Sephiroth. And so from our point of view, there's four parts of the soul which are traditionally corresponded to the tree of life, and these are the Yechida, which is the self, and that's the highest attainment of the self, which corresponds to Keter, which is obviously the first emanating Sephira. Chia is the next one, which is the life force, which would correspond to Chokhmah. The Neshama, which is the intuition, which is the breath of God, which is Bina. The Ruach, which is the intellect, and then the Nephesh, which is the animal soul, which is very much Malkut. So the Tree of Life is very much a symbol of the soul of man and the universe, but also the tree is within us. So all these parts of the tree are actually parts of our soul and our body. So everything we do, all of our physical manifestation, our body, our daily tasks we do, washing up, whatever, going to the toilet, that is all holy from that perspective, because all parts of this tree are levels of that divine essence within inside us. So moving on to the next part, we've looked at the different structures of the tree, the 10 Sephiroth, the triads, as well as the four worlds and the parts of the soul. So the final bit I wanted to just quickly cover would be the lightning flash, the path of the serpent, and the path of the razor's edge. So when we talk about the lightning flash is very much it's very well described actually within this particular quotation, which comes from Ezekiel 1:14. When you think of the 10 Sephiroth, cover your heart and seal the desire of your lips to announce their divinity. Yoke your mind. Should it escape your grasp, reach out and bring it back under your control. As it was said, and the living creatures ran and returned as the appearance of a flash of lightning. In such manner was the covenant created. So the lightning flash essentially describes the creative process beginning with the unknown, the unmanifest hidden God, and it follows it through 10 distinct changes or stages to a change in the material world. It is really about this kind of instantaneous moment of creation in terms of everything is created. And it's a very kind of powerful way of thinking about things. It's very much a key to practical magical work. The lightning flash descends from Kether and goes straight down through the Tree of Life, and it's very much a part of that power that descends from Kether. So the first stage of it is obviously the Kether to Malkut, and this is the first movement, which is representative of the act of creation. So this is the creative force that starts in Kether, descends through the 4 different worlds of Absolute, Bria, Yetzirah and Azai until it reaches Malkut. So the path it follows is very much Kether Chokhmah, which is the path of the Fool, obviously, in the Tarot. Chokhmah to Bina, which is the Empress in the Tarot. Bina to Chesed. That isn't actually a path in the Tarot, although it has been argued it is a secret one. And then Hesed to Geburah, which is strength. Geburah to Tiferet, which should be justice. Tiferet to Netzach, which is death card in the Tarot. Netzach to Hod, which is the Tower. Hod to Yesod, which is the Sun. And obviously Yesod to Malkut, which is the universe. So it's interesting to note that the lightning flash jumps across the abyss between Bina and Chesed. And this obviously, helps to represent the yawning void of the abyss, but also kind of mimics the action of lightning, electricity in real life, being able to kind of jump from point to point. It's also meant to have a rhythm to it, so it expands and contracts, which again can be likened to a breath or breathing out of the divine. That's a brief overview of the lightning flash from that point of view. I mean, it can very much be seen as a kind of initiatory journey. I won't go into this in too much detail now, but if you look at the stages of the tarot cards that the different stages of the flash correspond to, it's very much some really strong, powerful archetypal cards there, starting with the Fool and then obviously becoming the universe. So you can see that from both a descent of power in terms of the journey of the Fool from Kether, but also a return to the source from the universe. So becoming the universe and then going through the tree on an initiatory journey, and becoming one with the universe in the form of the Fool. So that's just an interesting thing that we'll probably have a look at in the future. And and the next one I wanted to look at in terms of the paths is very much the path of the Malkut to Keter, which is the path of the serpent. And this is really the second movement on the tree. And it's essentially representative of the return journey on the Tree of Life from Malkut to Keter. As the name suggests, the path of the serpent is not a straight line. It winds and curls around the tree on its ascent. And this is a deliberate mechanism designed to really sort of open up the path gradually and at the correct time rather than at the same time. And yeah, I mean, I found a blog about this called Light in the Darkness, but they wrote something nice about this, and I'll quote. It said, the path of the serpent relates to the principle of polarity. So firstly, the movement from side to side of the tree, from pillar to pillar and back, echoes the zigzag route of the lightning flash at a higher level of complexity. Secondly, and more importantly, each of the paths between the Sephiroth is itself a polarity relationship, a force of balance created by the conflict between two Sephiroth in interaction. Each curve of the serpent therefore represents a polarity into balance in terms of the human microcosm. It represents the joining together of the two aspects of consciousness into a greater wholeness. So if we consider the path of the serpent from the path of initiation, we find that obviously the path of the serpent touches most of the paths on its journey to Keter, but it's also symbolic in that it represents the balancing out of different aspects within the soul of the magician. Finally, in terms of the talking about the different paths, there's also the middle pillar, which is also known as the path of the razor's edge. So as we've seen, that the path of the serpent relates to the journey of the magician up the Tree of Life. However, there's also another route called the middle way, which is usually associated with the mystic path. And this follows a direct route up the middle of consciousness on the Tree of Life, and normally takes the following routes. So it's obvious that, Dion Fortune actually mentioned this in terms of, described this very well when she said, "It's obvious that nothing can be evolved, unfolded, which was not previously involved and infolded. The actual course of involution follows the track of the lightning flash or flaming sword from Keter to Malkut, in order of development of the Sephiroth, previously described, but consciousness descends plane by plane and only begins to manifest when the polarizing Sephiroth are in equilibrium. Therefore, the modes of consciousness are assigned to the equally liberating Sephiroth upon the middle pillar, but the magical powers are assigned to the opposing Sephiroth, each at the end of the beam of the balance of a pair of opposites." So what she's really saying is the middle pillar is the main focus of the mystical path, as opposed to the magical path. Daniel Moeller, in one of his recent books, described this quite well as well when he said, the great work can only be accomplished when the polarizing aspects of consciousness are in equilibrium, harmonized like San Cipriano, to highlight the beneficial factors of both the left and right hand path. So the structure of the middle pillar is as follows. So it goes Malkut, Yesod, Tiferet, Dart, and then Keter. And from a kind of initiatory standpoint, you could look at this as being Earth, the Moon, which would be representative of the kind of astral etheric plane, Sun, which is the rebirth, sacrifice, God, the Abyss, Dart, or the doorway or the empty tomb, and then also obviously kind of nothingness or oneness at the top. So it's very much a rising up the pillar until you reach that point. This is very much the path of the mystic, the bodhisattva, the saints. So it often involves the renunciation of earthly things and, various devotional practices. It's called the razor edge path in the Upanishads, which is described by the following by Radha Bania. Hearing the term razor edge path, one might think it is the most dangerous, but it is the safest of all paths, because it is where complete equilibrium is preserved, and therefore there is complete security. It is a path where there is profound peace, a path where there is absolute harmony. If you stray from that path, get lost in the surroundings and find other paths, there may be conflict, there may be hesitation. But when you tread the middle path, it is secure, because it is one-pointed, and in it harmony can be found from the beginning to the end. The middle pillar can also be described as the dividing line between the yin and the yang in the Eastern system, or the Tao as well. And from that point of view, one thing is not yin or yang, but kind of a combination of the two. So the path of the razor edges is really that path of walking between the worlds and balancing each aspect perfectly within oneself. Obviously quite a difficult path to follow, but certainly one that provides a lot of balance and harmony. So, and this is obviously quite well kind of expressed, I think, in the idea of the Tao as well, as being this kind of point between those two things. And I wanted to finish the podcast with a quote from Rudolf Steiner about the Tao, it was quite interesting, I thought. And he says, "The Tao gives expression to the highest, to which a large part of humanity can look up and has revered for thousands of years. It is something which was considered as a distant goal of the world and of humanity, the highest element which man carried as a germ within him, which would one day develop into a fully opened blossom from the innermost depths of human nature. Tao signifies both a deeply hidden basis of the soul and at the same time exalted future. Not only the name Tao, but the very thought of Tao filled those who had insight into it with timid reverence. The Tao religion is based upon the principle of development, and it proclaims, 'That by which I am surrounded today is but a stage which has to be overcome. I must clearly see that this development in which I am involved has a goal, that I am going to work towards an exalted goal, and that within me there lives a power which spurs me on to come to the great goal of Tao. If I can feel this great force within me, and if I can feel that all creatures are aiming towards this great goal, then this force becomes the guiding force, rushing towards me in the wind, sounding out of the stones, flashing its light to me from the sun. In the plant it is revealed as the force of growth, in the animal as feeling and perception. It is the force which will continually form after form for every exalted aim, through which I know myself to be at one with the whole of nature, which flows out from me and into me with every breath I take, the symbol for the highest evolving spirit, which I experience as life itself. I feel this force as Tao." So, thanks very much for joining this week on this inaugural episode of the Occult London podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and found it interesting. We have got a website set up on Podbean, so I'll add the address to that in the show notes if anyone wants to come and check us out. All the episodes will be added onto there, and the plan is also to have a Facebook group as well. We'll be doing a few episodes on the Qabbalah initially, and then in the future I'm hoping to get some guests on, so if anyone has any ideas or would like to get involved with the podcast, then I would love to hear from you. And in the meantime, have a great week, and I hope you enjoyed listening.